For our workshop regarding our proposed Lake County Public Safety Center, and I will turn things over to Jason.
Good morning, Commissioners. Couple just housekeeping items. At the 10 o'clock meeting, we'll have our general fund reserve policy document will be on the agenda for consideration that we presented here the past couple of weeks. Made its way through the prosecutor's office, outside counsel, signature file. As noted in one of our meetings in early October, having this policy, and I'll just reiterate the purpose, is to ensure the financial stability and security of our general fund, to guard against cyclical changes in revenues expenditures by taking a proactive approach to fiscal management of the county. And in short, that policy includes the budget stabilization and payroll liabilities shall equal to or exceed 30% of the current operating budget. So that'll be in front of you at 10 o'clock this morning. I just wanted to note that for the record. That was an initiative we started a month ago, and that will be hopefully adopted this morning. Secondly,
Before you move on, just to put a finer point on it, though, that does protect our rating of AA1.
it's one of the multiple variables that will assist in maintaining that current bond rating. Other items that they look at are just our general economy, our ability to leverage, which is we're in a positive leverage position right now with the debt service that will be coming off our books at the county courthouse in 2025. Another variable they look at is financial performance, and that's where this particular one will kind of meet under that nexus. The fourth item that they'll look at during bond ratings, et cetera, is just kind of our institutional framework and our overall governance and operation capabilities. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Second, just brief update, and I'll note this at 10 o'clock as it relates to the Public Safety Center itself. We had the weekly meeting yesterday. I attended a portion of it where they were finalizing floor 0, i.e. the basement, and level 1, the main floor, on layout. Talked to Chief Izzo after the meeting. He said it went really well. A couple of the chief architects were in person yesterday. Old school Commissioner Hammercheck, you would appreciate it, with paper and tracing paper.
Yeah.
Kind of going through a myriad of different scenarios. So I think we're getting really close to getting those nailed down, which is key as we transition ultimately from SD, schematic design, which we're in now and concluding, into design development, which will start in mid-January once we have agreement on the schematic design. Also are looking at a mid to late January second trip, potentially to Marion County, which is Indianapolis. They have some of the electronics, other type of strategies that the sheriff is interested in. So that's in the early stages of planning, and I will keep the board briefed on that particular item. Regarding the first schematic design estimate, as you know, we're running kind of a dual path with HOK as our primary designer, and Gil Bain is under a pre-construction contract to run their own estimate. Those two estimates will be due on the 15th, which is tomorrow. They will then huddle up next week and review each estimate. I wouldn't call value engineer it, but look for any oddities that may persist amongst the designers and the contractors. So I would hope by mid to next week we'll start to get that feel, which is that first number on, is it, we've had a range from, we've heard for 2 years from 150 to 200, 170, we'll know with more detail next week, and I think that can assist as we move further down the road on our finance strategies. So I'll keep you posted, obviously into the holiday, on what that first schematic design estimate looks like that has been reconciled between the designers and Gil Bain. Furthermore, Joel and I have had a call or two with outside counsel, bond counsel, underwriters, PMC consultants, which is Jeff Applebaum primarily, and Ellis Katz, who are helping us on the construction management and finance and legal side, to make sure that we're on point with where we're thinking. And this, I would argue, a year to 18 months ago was a fairly muddy picture of what a finance picture looks like. I think as we begin to get a handle on the estimate next week or two, look at current about the past 5 years on revenues, deposits, quote unquote, into the public safety fund. We've settled a couple union contracts with the sheriff's office, et cetera. A few of the unknowns from 2021, 22 into 23, we're starting to see what those expenses will look like year over year. Some of our larger elected officials, the county prosecutor's office, sheriff's office, we now know what those figures will be with a fairly good degree of certainty year over year, with the cost of living adjustments, whatever those may be. We've had a couple really positive meetings. We had a meeting with Mr. Zurin and Meter a few weeks ago to get not a handle, but a better understanding on what investment earnings may look like in 2024 and 25, which is our portfolio. And then, as we all know, it's kind of a wait and see. Who knows what beyond that 2-year window looks like. So we're starting to get a better feel on what that revenue looks like. But Commissioner Hammercheck has talked about, well, what's $100 million look like? Subsequently, we're still using 5% as a placeholder at this point. We'll probably continue to do that unless we're advised otherwise, but some indications from multiple folks as we look at the GMP process, and I did skip a significant step. Pursuant to our timeline that was discussed yesterday, that GMP will be finalized in September. Earlier we were thinking June, July, so pros and cons to both of that. On the pro side, it might help us as rates potentially go lower. But then there's the construction cost side of that. So we'll have to analyze that in the first quarter of next year. Internally, Joel and I are working on that initial timeline to work through March and April. And the reason for that, if we indeed do an early package, i.e. civil site work, elevator orders, cells, generators, et cetera. So, but we have backed up when that GMP is required, which will be September as of our call yesterday. We have a working, just a debt service workbook, and this was used under the previous director Matus. It's on the screen, commissioners. There's a lot of action going on here. Essentially, it's a plug and play document, but using 5% at $100 million, Commissioner Hammercheck was spot on. It's $6.5 million on an annual 30-year debt service. And this chart, as we get through the year, it literally is plug and play. So I can pick this cell and drop a revised rate of, let's say, 4.5% in, and it goes down 6.1. So some of our conversations yesterday, Tuesday, were at some point maybe we can look at 4.5 as a budgetary figure, as from a play perspective, plug and play perspective. But we're not there yet, and But listening to the professionals, both internally and that help the county and have positively helped the county over the years, that's a bit of a good sign. Question is, and Commissioner Hammercheck and I have spoke about this, is we need to ensure sustainability on the ability to pay. And a lot of that ability to pay, quite frankly, is going to be on our operational costs. As I noted a few moments ago, we have addressed some of those larger scale items that we didn't know what the final value would be early 2022. And as I noted, union negotiations and some agency salary line item adjustments, which we have made. So we'll continue to work on this traditional method. And we've also started to think about, looks like I'm having some technical issues here. Is there a hybrid approach to financing this facility whereas we do $50 million, and I am having some issues in short-term borrowing, $50 million in long-term, where there's some opportunity on a call perspective to leverage the market, maybe pay a little bit more, maybe pay a little bit less, depending on where things go. So that has, quite frankly, intrigued us. Speaking with outside counsel and bond counsel, Mr. Applebaum yesterday, they all agree that we should really, really take a hard look at that option, as we're also looking at this standard 30-year borrowing that we've done here in the past in Lake County. So we're not there yet, but Commissioner, if you said every week, I think we're making some steps. And as I started my comments with, a year and a half ago, it was pretty muddy. It's starting to clear up, I think, for staff, but we still have to address that, sustainability model, work on the what if investment. So there's still a lot of work for us to do, but I think Commissioner Hammercheck, as you said, we're starting to, I don't think we have all four corners yet, but we're starting to define some of those metrics in the finance formula. with that rambling, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No, I appreciate your being as comprehensive, because that's been one of the big things, is sustainability, factoring in revenues, expenses, looking forward. And I think one of the big themes that our bond experts that drilled into us at our meeting that started these meetings was, we're in the business of running a county, not a jail. So we have to take everything into account. Jason, if you want to maybe expand on that a little bit, because that could be a good way to bridge some of this financial instability as far as interest rates goes.
Yeah, so this working spreadsheet, once again, is a working document, and there's scenarios along the bottom tab that like, for example, the one in front of you is $50 million in long-term bonds, $50 million in short-term notes, where there's some variability in our ability to pay, like on column J. Once again, the starting point is still in that 6.5, 6.9. Once again, we're still way early in the game, but this particular example gives us a little bit of wiggle room. Flexibility is the proper term in years 1 through 5, we think, at this point in time. Depending on where we're at, can we pay down more in the principal? And I think that's always in our best interest. So I would argue that 6-8 months ago, this particular strategy, short versus long hybrid, I don't think we talked a tremendous amount about it. We did, but it's becoming more of a possibility, I think, in our mind, and we'll continue to work with our county elected officials, the treasurer, auditor, et cetera, on where things look. Meter's been great. Eileen, Treasurer Zern, we had a great conversation. We have a lot of resources available to the commissioner's office, both internally and externally. In the table that was set previously, the finance director made us, and where we're going, I think I'm excited for the next 2 to 3 months as we continue to fine-tune this approach.
So part of the exercise also, I think you locked down a path. If we could go back to some of your earlier discussion, we're talking about strategies, issues, our field trip. You know, people may wonder why we're looking at the electronic monitoring. A lot of that has to do with cost of staffing, trying to stay as close to staff neutral as possible. We realize there's probably, with new programs, there's going to be other costs, but a good faith effort to put as much onto technology, as much as I try to resist an over-reliance on technology, but as a force multiplier.
Right. Yeah, it's with Mr. Stefanko and Telecom and his, and I think Commissioner Hammercheck, you're cut from that same cloth as far as there's nothing wrong with the key, but the technology and the operational advantages that it brings to an operation of that scale, we have to embrace, find that happy medium, if you will, to try to the best of the sheriff's ability to be staff neutral. A head in that building, an employee in that building is $100,000 all day long, no matter what position you're looking at. So if operationally, and the way that that's trending in the design is positive to meet that goal. But if we have to add 10 COs or 3 nurses, what have you, that's the operating variable that makes you a little bit nervous. I'm extremely confident that we can finance a fixed asset. We can do that. It's that year-over-year operational cost. Now, we've talked about opioid dollars and some of the programming that I think, in Jason Boyd's opinion, will be able to help in our mental health, our drug counseling, et cetera. I don't see a bricks and mortar solution to that. I think the commissioners agree with that. But as we have heard time and time again, that's the largest hospital in the county over there, quote unquote. There is 70% of the inmates have a mental health, substance abuse, or some sort of other issue that requires more than traditional detention. So hopefully opioid dollars, other external resources, nonprofit collaborations will assist in those day-to-day operating costs. That's our goal. But we have to prepare. If you know the facility as we speak is designed for 503 beds, the new building currently the current jail that sits over on Erie Street today has 353. I think a long time from now we'll have to have that conversation. Obviously, if inmates go up and start to occupy the facility, I think it's prudent to note that we're banking $0 on potential housing other inmates from other jurisdictions. That was the model that was quite frankly successful in the current facility, but we're not going to bank on revenue from the marshals or other communities. If we get it, we get it, but that's a 0 on the revenue side in our mind.
And the notion there is that is if come, the rooms themselves, rooms. You can tell that the shift from the incarceration model to the rehabilitation model, I'm trying to actually incorporate that language. The higher the occupancy, the total cost per person comes down. If there was some opportunity for other communities to make use of the facility, because there is a genuine need in the region. And Lake County does have an excellent working history.
Yeah.
But we also need to be cognizant, a lot of the criminals in other counties, there's some pretty bad hombres. So we got to be
mid
careful.
40%, I think the number from
Yeah.
beyond.
Yeah, well, right now we're looking at the folks that are in that, our current jail facility, I believe it's 46% are non-Lake County residents. So there's a lot of modeling that needs to go on, but that would be one way to defer the cost. But again, you can't factor that in. We need to make sure we have adequate funding to finish it. So
Correct. And another, not another, but a new term that we discussed on our finance call this week was, as we know, commissioners, as you know, we're going down the path of a bridging design build process, construction methodology, which ultimately is the guaranteed maximum price that now is slated for September. There's talking to Mr. Applebaum, there's called an IGMP, which is initial GMP, which could be something a little bit earlier where we have to borrow less sooner. Therefore, we save as opposed to borrowing 100. Maybe we have to borrow, whatever that number is. So there's, as I said earlier, there appears to be more favorable options as we continue to do this research, and that IGMP is just another learning tool that I quite frankly learned about this week that may be beneficial for us to continue to examine. But I think the team that you guys have put together beyond your internal staff is proving beneficial time and time again. To be able to pick up the phone and call attorneys and architects who've built buildings and financed buildings across the country has been a great asset. So I thank you guys for that.
no, and I appreciate the effort that the team is putting in and the cooperation, the exercise that we're going through during these workshops. There's a lot of new terms to folks, but this exercise does show that we are making a good faith effort to account for all variables, be it on the plus or the minus side, but the SD, schematic design, DD, design development. Now we've got the IGMP and going into GMP. All of these things have a timeline. And these exercises we're going through are to make sure that we are on that timeline and we have our eyes wide open as we're making informed decisions, not rushed decisions. And as we've been cautioned for quite a while, any delays beyond the proposed schedule, we're literally looking at $1 million a month cost increase as we delay. So there is an incentive to these workshops, so just to keep us on track. Jason, anything you want to add to that process on those timelines?
No, yeah, as I said, the process when we had our team call this week was we're going to continue to work through the spring. We thought the GMP was going to be more June, July, but we're in September. But as I noted, from a staffing perspective, we're going to continue to work as if we have a more accelerated timeline. And just as I look at this schedule, which is in about 2-point font, so pardon my squinting, this is if we're to move dirt, it's a 20 up and running, 2027 type of a timeline. So that's the complexity of a project like this. For example, we had contractors on site with Chief Izzo Tuesday, already walking the site on fencing, what parking was going to be compromised, where they're putting trailers, potential lay down areas, 100 men and women workers on site, where we're going to park them. Oh, by the way, where are we parking our people? And I've said it before, I'll say it, it's going to be a pain in the butt. I've been saying this for years, but we're going to have to figure it out. That's the beauty and the curse of keeping your assets in a traditional county seat as in Painesville, which we're doing. We'll get through it in the long run, but I'm a resident of Willoughby, and I remember Mayor Anderson saying Willoughby had a parking problem in the 1980s because there was parking all over the place, meaning open parking spots.
Yeah.
If you got to drive around a little bit to find a parking spot in downtown Willoughby, that's a sign of success. People are there, people are visiting. Same thing here. If we have to find some, we have to walk to our offices where we have heat and seats, then so be it. We did it on this building where we all parked over on the Lake East site. That's just part of it. So that's my warning shot to all of our employees that
No, that's
it is what it
fair.
is.
And I do remember you putting in the diligence of actually walking things in
4
verifying
minutes.
time. Yeah.
4-minute walk. So I think that's all I have for today, commissioners.
I think you've met our
Joel, do we hit
requests.
highlights?
Mr. Regadish, anything you want to add, sir?
I'm happy that, the steps we're taking now is to protect our general fund. That's, I think, a key component to this. I was in Columbus last week, as you know, and there's no less than 44 different jail projects to some extent being talked about or started throughout the state. So this is a big topic in the state of Ohio, and a lot of these communities are getting just getting their feet going. I think we're ahead of the game.
Sure.
Some of the stories I've heard, we're doing things differently, using Jeff Applebaum and their firm and using Ellis. It gets us in a direction. These guys have done this before. We're not reinventing the wheel for them. And these kind of discussions, these kind of scenarios we're working out, I know we'll choose the best one when we get to that point. What that may be depends on the market, depends on a lot of other factors. But I think I'm more excited now than ever that it's a project that's going to be pretty exciting, pretty viable, and carry Lake County through its biggest project for years and years and years to come. I think we looked an eye on the future, and we have the room to grow, and it'll be good to see it once the shovel hits the ground.
I think that's a good point, and I think we shouldn't shortchange ourselves with our folks who help us in Columbus. We've had some really good meetings the past 10 days about putting our story out there, which is a positive story, so positive that may hurt us indirectly, the way that we maintain our facility with our the corrections officers, the telecommunications buildings and grounds. That I think we've used the term we're a victim of our own successes because of the amount of blood, sweat, and tears we put into maintaining that building. The jail funding, and thanks to our representatives and senators, et cetera, has begun to increase for funding for jails. But if there's 44 of them, and if the median cost is 50, and we're above median, then there's a lot of need out there. But a lot of positive conversations coming out of Columbus that we've already submitted a document last week. Chief Izzo and I did, requesting dollars. I have a white paper ready to go, change the header, change the date at a moment's notice, that gives I think a fairly concise yet factual historical perspective and where we're at perspective or going forward action. So I agree with that. So thanks for the reminder, and we'll keep plugging away in Columbus.
Just on that note, there also is language associated with the marijuana revenues, proceeds, and how that could be a direct benefit to sheriff's departments, which this would be a eligible candidate for that. And again, we continue to work closely with our legislative representatives and our voice down in Columbus, Brian Dirtle, who I have to say the return on investment that he has brought us is off the charts amazing. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Jason.
Yeah, I really enjoy working with Mr. Dirtle. His ability to professionally navigate, all the funding opportunities throughout Columbus and the multiple agencies within the state of Ohio and Washington is from our utilities department to our local communities to this public safety center project. It's been great, and I continue to I talk with Mr. Diddle once or twice a week on, hey, what am I missing? Who do I need to call? What's the message? When's the message? Et cetera. So he's been a great asset to Lake County in totality, just beyond Lake County government. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
I'd like to think that, but my philosophy has always been let people do what they're good at. And Mr. Dirtle's a prime example of that, as we did through this whole process, where I think in a lot of other counties, they're, I'll do it myself. You have a lot to learn before you can make a project like this happen. And we're taking a lot of that time out of it and getting these people to do what they've done already and what they're good at.
But this project is so vast in multiple areas: legal, finance. I remember talking to Mr. Hackman and Mr. Colson a year ago about bringing on outside, and not to speak for Dave, but I mean that's just of great assistance to the book of business that they're doing every day with their 53 clients or whatever. So a lot of that outside consulting work helps us internally, that we have a good sense of perspective, that when I do hand a legal document to Dave, we have a really good understanding that it's been in front of a good set of professionals, be it architects, engineers, counsel, finance advisors, etc. So we made our way through this project, but this particular safety center is a whole nother. I mean, we have an RFP due tomorrow on insurance coverage, just because it's well beyond the scope of what we have. Joel and I talked to Corsa a year ago about this, and they said, yeah, do what you got to do with outside services. So, very, very complex. So having the key partners at the table from the jump. And I remember some of our first meetings 2 years ago downstairs, talking to the likes of a Jeff Applebaum and tell us about bridging design build. I knew design build, I didn't know bridging design build. We've been very diligent. Yeah, that's the right word, and it's proving beneficial. We're still in the first inning of this ball game, so we have a long way to go.
I have to say, though, the bridging design build is proving to have been the right choice. The cost savings, the scheduling, the control of the project management, it's proving to be the right choice for what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of detail, I again, shout out to the sheriff's offices.
Yeah.
Those exercises they go through weekly. The ones I attend, it's been to the point where I just sit back and observe, because I can't add any content. They know how that one of their clients needs to be brought through the building, and how it's a secure building, and it's so different than it was when we built our jail. Yeah. How it works now, and what the state expects. So. Yep.
And we have our back to the schedule. I'm sorry. We'll be scheduling our first meeting. Actually, it's next week. Maybe a call with DRC, Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, who kind of will stamp everything. So we're at that point where the state will now start to see where we're at. I'm not concerned about it whatsoever. We've been designing up to this point based on those standards. And additionally, I'm going to be calling City Manager Lewis probably next week. We have a tentative date in January to sit down with city officials, their city architect, their staff planners, etc. They saw a bit of a sneak peek, but I think we're to the point now where I think we might be good from a variance standpoint, but we need to start to now get in front of those folks to look at the regulatory side. I'll be bringing in Chief Building Official Dave Strichko here soon, now that the building is starting to take a bit of massing. Obviously Mark Eiffelise and Paul Stefanko have been in, but that's the other beauty of this project, is from a building permit perspective. Dave Strichko, help not hinder. It's our team on the permit side, so we will have the ability to move this through as quick as we can from a permitting perspective. That's a huge, in some communities that can be a huge holdup.
To say the least, yes.
So that's all I have. I'm done.
Excellent. All right. Anything further, sir?
I'm good.
All right. Then with that, we'll close our workshop, and thank you for joining us today, and